Welcome, friends, to Vinder's General Goods. My name is Van Vinder, and it will be my pleasing to be helping you today. Come in, come, browse my wares and see if there's anything you would be liking to be seeing more closer.
Greetings gamers, today I want to talk to you about how to make great non-player characters for your D&D and other role-playing games. NPCs can have a massive impact on your players. They can become firm friends that your party is willing to die for to protect, or they can become the party's sworn enemies. But to have a lasting impact on your players, your NPCs need to be compelling. So today we're going to be talking about a couple of things that I think are essential to making amazing NPCs, and then we'll run through a couple of example NPCs that I use in my personal game. So when making a major NPC for my game, there are a few questions and pieces of information that I want to fill in before I really get started. So let's go through these points one by one and talk about why I think they're important to making really great NPCs. Starting with the name, an NPC's name doesn't have to mean anything, but I like to use names as a way to deliver small Easter eggs to the party. You might do this by using something like Google Translate and translating a keyword about the character's personality into a different language and using that as their name. Or you might name them after a real or fictional person who has similar attributes and traits to that particular character. A lot of the time your players aren't going to pick up on this, but it's a nice little nod to the NPC maybe not being what they first appear to be, or giving a little bit of depth to the NPC without the players actually having to meet them. Next, you want to think about physical features of the NPC. There are certain traits that you can give a non-player character that will elicit certain responses from your party. For example, if you give an NPC big, bright blue eyes, they'll probably make the party think of a baby and give a friendly connection to that NPC. Conversely, if you give an NPC small and shifty, beady eyes, then that's immediately going to make the party suspicious, even if they have no real reason to be. In terms of physicality, you can communicate a lot about a character in the way that they move. If a character walks straight with an arched back and a puffed chest, you know that they probably think of themselves as someone to be taken seriously. Now, whether or not they are depends on their actions and how other people treat them, but you can tell straight away that that person considers themselves important. For example, if that character was significantly shorter than is average for their race, you could probably assume that they're making up for it by standing tall and puffing their chest and making themselves appear more imposing. Similarly, if a character walks with big, lumbering, thundering steps and talks quite slowly, you're probably going to consider them to be a little bit of an oaf. Whereas if a character moves swiftly and quietly, you're probably going to see them as quite graceful, or maybe you'll be quite suspicious of them. When thinking about how your NPC is going to talk, you want to think more than just about whether or not they have an accent. Small vocal tics or quirks, little differences in regional dialect, or their cadence, how their speech flows, is all going to impact on how the players perceive that particular character. One of my favourite ways to give character to NPCs in my game is using their relationship to the party and other NPCs, and how the party's actions have impacted upon them. For example, if you had an NPC that, for whatever reason, particularly hated orcs, then most of your party might go into their shop, for example, and have a pleasant experience. But if the half-orc of the party went in, they might meet cold, resentful talk from that NPC, and they might be quite rude. Seeing that difference in how they treat different members of the party based on racial prejudices or on what the party has done in the past is going to make the NPC feel like a much more fully realised character. Perhaps your NPC might have some sort of disagreement with another NPC in town. This gives your players the chance to intervene and try and resolve the issue that these two characters are having. It gives them the chance to pick a side, and then their relationship with both parties will change based on the outcome. The NPC who they choose to side with will probably view the party more favourably after that, whereas the one that they went against is probably going to have a negative association with the party from that point on. They might give them higher prices in a store or even refuse to interact with them at all. And bringing in your party's previous actions is a really tangible way for them to see the consequences of the things that they do. For example, if your party has recently found and destroyed an orc encampment near to a city, the way in which they go about that particular task might impact how people in the city speak to them and treat them. So if the players annihilated all the orcs in the encampment, slaughtered them to a man and showed no mercy, well, any half-orc or orc traders or NPCs in the city are probably going to view your players with a disdain and a little bit of fear because they will have heard that this is the group that just slaughtered a load of orcs. Whereas if you have a human or an elven NPC in town who particularly hates orcs, well, the first time the players interact with them, they might give them some sort of bonus or benefit. They might give them a gift, they might give them discount in their store, or they might give them some sort of information because they have wiped out the orc encampment. And finally, with motivations and fears, this is where you can get a lot of juice for your NPCs and for your player characters in general. Knowing what motivates a character and what they're afraid of can inform basically any interaction that you have with them. Perhaps the party came across an NPC who themselves wants to be an adventurer. Well, that NPC will probably be very friendly to the party because they'd want to spend some time with them, ask them questions, and maybe learn some tricks of the trade. Or maybe sometime in the past, a different group of adventurers came into a town or a city, and as a result of their actions, an NPC's husband ended up dead. In that case, this NPC would have a distrust and a dislike of adventuring parties, and they might be very cold towards the party. They might tell the party that they think they should leave, refuse to help them, refuse to provide goods or services to them. Little things like this all help to make your NPCs feel more alive. Things have happened to them before your players arrive. They have goals that don't include your players in the future, and it makes them seem more three-dimensional and real. And you can use fears to a similar effect. Maybe you have an NPC who your players need information from who's afraid of fire. Well, if a dragonborn intimidates them, they're probably going to give up the information because they'd be afraid that the dragonborn would set them on fire. Now, you could represent this by giving your dragonborn player a bonus on their intimidate or on their diplomacy check, or you could communicate it non-mechanically by having the NPC quiver and cower away from the dragonborn. I want to give you an example of an NPC that I've used to great effect in my campaign. You saw him at the start of this video, and his name is Vinder. Vinder is probably the standout NPC of my current campaign at the moment. He first met the party in their second session, I believe, and they formed an immediate bond to him. In their first session, they had fought and defeated a vampire, and after they had done that, they went back into town and into the general store where they met Vinder. Vinder is a shady-looking man with a really bad Eastern European accent, and the players immediately assumed that he was also a vampire. This went on for many weeks with them assuming he was a vampire, but for some reason no one ever thought to do serious checks on him. He spoke with many broken English and constantly referred to the party as his good friends. Some weeks the party would visit him just to hear him speak. The other thing that kept them coming back to Vinder was the fact that he always had exactly what they needed at any given time. And though the players thought it was odd, no one thought to investigate too deeply into this because he was consistently providing them with magical items at a reduced cost. Several times someone in the party would suggest that they really needed to do an identify spell on him to see whether he was magic or evil or undead, because they all intrinsically knew something wasn't right with him, but none of them wanted to give up that discount that he gave them or the fact that he always had what they needed. Soon the party started making Vinder a more important part of their adventuring. They started making deals with him to get items at an even more reduced rate, or get their items up front and pay back a smaller amount. And one of the players even signed a blank contract with Vinder in order to get a magical artifact. Well, some 20 weeks after this blank contract was signed, probably 40 sessions after Vinder was first introduced, the players learned their mistake. They discovered that Vinder was in fact an alias, and Vinder was actually one of the player character's fathers, and he emerged during a climactic battle and killed that player's mother right in front of the party. It was an incredibly emotional and satisfying event because for nearly a year the players had known that something wasn't right about him, and to see it manifest as a character's mother being killed because they hadn't pursued that intuition was a really satisfying conclusion. They also learned the dangers of buying all of your magic items in one place, because every single item that they owned had in fact been cursed by Vinder. They took their items to a local high-level cleric who performed the necessary identify spells upon these items, only for them to learn that everything that they had bought for him wasn't exactly what it seemed. Some of them were transmuted creatures that they were wearing around themselves, and it was really a great lesson and a culmination of a year of bad decisions on their part. So there you have it, some tips on how to make really memorable NPCs for your games, as well as some examples that I've used in my own game. I'd really love to hear about the most memorable NPC that you've created or that you've come across as a player, so please post stories of your favourite NPCs down in the comments below. But until next time, happy gaming. Thanks for watching. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below for new content every single Friday. And if you want to keep watching, well, there's another couple videos for you to watch just over there. Happy gaming.